With the coronavirus disrupting the traditional college experience, some students are using this time to explore alternate routes to traditional four-year college institutions. Community colleges offer benefits of a two-year degree and lower costs. Many of these colleges are also working to help students hit hard by the pandemic. I'm joined now by Rolando Montoya, interim president of Miami-Dade College. We were just discussing Miami-Dade, and I plan to give him talk about Rolando Montoya's college down there now. Instead of Eduardo Padron's, but Becky Rowley, president of Santa Fe Community College, and also Tiffany Jones, the senior director of higher education policy at the Education Trust. Welcome to all of you. Rolando, I love Miami-Dade College, as you probably heard in my earlier comments, and had a lot of discussions in the past with your predecessor. And I'm just interested, as so many different crises, economic, racial strife, health strife have hit America. They've also hit all of your institutions. But I'd like to hear, again, how you're navigating through this and what are the big issues you've had to contend with at Miami-Dade. I don't think we have Rolando with us. Is Rolando with us? He can't hear us. So let me. I'm going to jump to Becky Rowley then. So until we can get Dr. Montoya with us, Becky, I also used to work for the Senator of New Mexico, Jeff Bingaman, so I know your school very well as well, way back when. How have you been able to navigate the college stress right now? Folks, nobody can hear me right now at this moment, so I'm going to ask our team to keep talking or keep trying to get them connected. Can any of you hear me? So no one can hear me. Okay, so folks, I'm going to just talk for a minute both about this, but I want to get my team to get the folks on as quickly as possible. So we've been talking a lot today about the future of education, and this is going to be my own editorial for a moment. What I would say is that there are extraordinary examples of success. We heard from the University of Houston. We also heard from Ohio State University, folks that are thinking in the whole package, about everything from mental health to getting stakeholders, from students to professors, to understand that this is a stressful and different time. But there has to be a kind of, commitment from everybody to get a sort of lift to these new platforms. And I think that is, the challenge in what we've been hearing. Are we any closer to getting our panel online, please?
I can hear you now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, it's nice to have you. Is Dr. Montoya there? Okay, great, all of you. I apologize. So I was talking to all of you and saying incredibly great things about your schools and each of you. But let me just start off for a minute. So I just introduced each of you. Rolando Montoya, interim president of Miami-Dade College, Becky Rowley, president of Santa Fe Community College, and also Tiffany Jones, senior director of higher education policy at the Education Trust. So look, we've been talking for a couple hours now, really amazing stories of resilience, innovation, creativity during times of extraordinary stress. And I have now made a commitment. What I was making a commitment to Rolando Montoya is I will from this day out talk about the Miami-Dade College of Rolando Montoya, because I knew his predecessor so well. In fact, Donna Shalala and I were talking about it. It's such a, all of you have great institutions that you work with, but Miami-Dade has always been very special to me. One, because of its size, but then when you kind of get down and get beyond the size, the way it has achieved so much for so many different tracks of people coming in. So I'm doing your job for you a little bit, Dr. Montoya, but why don't you tell us, as an institution of your size and your outreach to so many people who might not otherwise have had a track into education, how are you dealing with this time to create the nimbleness and the flexibility of responding to COVID, responding to race, responding to unemployment? How are you holding it together?
Well, let me start with the educational component. We needed to make sure that all segments of the population, whatever their preference was, would have an opportunity to come to the college during the fall semester. And we are offering three modalities of instruction. A smaller group is fully presential, face-to-face. That represents about 5% of our enrollment right now. And that's for areas like the police academy or aviation, culinary arts, funeral services, that you really cannot do it online, and students need to be here with us. Then about 20% of our sections are fully online, and will remain like that until December 18, when we complete the fall semester. And the third modality, that is the largest, representing about 75% of our enrollment, is hybrid. Logically, the situation, the statistics here in Miami weren't so good until recently. Now they are improving. That's why we decided that the first month, the month of September, the hybrid model would remain fully online. And then on September 28, we will be activating the face-to-face components of the hybrid model. In terms of helping the community, during the summer, we distributed $13 million of CARES Act money in cash stipends to our students. And now during the fall, we are planning to distribute about $12 more million. And then we were very lucky that several local philanthropists and the foundation of the college also supported us, granting more scholarships than ever. Then never in the history of this college we have distributed more scholarships and more cash among our students in order to help them with the situation. In fact, anyone who might need help, we can find a solution so that the person can come for free to Miami-Dade College. We also engage in rapid training programs in areas that could be attractive for business and industry, in areas that are still employing individuals. And not only we made it fully free for them, but we granted them monthly stipends so that they could continue concentrating on education and wouldn't have to worry about their living expenses. Some areas in which we provided this kind of support was cybersecurity, digital marketing, networking, but even in more traditional areas like daycare, in which right now, because the schools are closed, many people needs to take care of children so that the parents can work, and they needed the appropriate certification and the appropriate training, and we have been providing that. The county, the local government, Miami-Dade County, just granted us $3 million grant. $500,000 is to cover cost of instruction and administration, but we are going to provide $2.5 million in cash to 2,500 displaced workers from the hospitality industry. They take the course with us, and then we supplement them with $1,000 stipend so that we help them. And we are training them to do better in the industry in which they are currently engaged, but we are also offering to them opportunities to continue the education in other fields, given the fact that hotels, restaurants, bars, entertainment centers here in Miami are tremendously affected. And this is not going to be short term. It's going to be a while until Florida recovers with that.
Right.
That's basically what we are doing for the people here in Miami-Dade County.
Well, you know, every time I talk to somebody about Miami-Dade, we're going to get to Santa Fe in a moment, but Miami-Dade, I feel like I'm talking to somebody running a small nation, but a big nation anyway. It's incredible. Becky, what you didn't hear me say is I was name dropping a minute ago to you. We embrace that in Washington. But I used to work for Senator Jeff Bingaman of New Mexico, and was in Santa Fe and even at your college in the past. And so it's a real privilege to have you here today. Tell us how you're navigating, because I know that SFCC is under pressures from a lot of different directions. Are you holding it together? What are the stress points? Do you see another side to this?
Yes, I would say that we are holding it together, but it's been very difficult. Santa Fe is a much different area than the Miami-Dade area, obviously. Our college is much smaller. New Mexico is a really rural state. I think our approach kind of makes more sense if you look at it in the context of what New Mexico has done as a state to approach COVID. So our governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, has been very aggressive from the start about trying to contain and, in a sense, get ahead of the whole COVID problem. So we very aggressively shut down all public schools, colleges, everything in mid-March, and everything has pretty much stayed that way and continues that way right now. So our college, we have about 25% of our courses that are available face-to-face right now. And those are the same things that are being done at Miami-Dade, some healthcare courses, a few studio art things, some trades programs like welding and automotive that really had to be taught more face-to-face. But I will say that we have also worked with those instructors, even in areas that you would have thought no one can possibly teach these areas online. They can do a lot more than what we thought. And I have watched people get very creative about ways to offer culinary programs online, ways to offer exercise classes online, all kinds of things that you would have never imagined. So what has been problematic for us really has been just access to broadband for a much higher number of our students than I'm comfortable with at all. So we early on, when we started sending people home and really converted online, I would say in the space of about 2 weeks, it was brutal. There were some classes that had been online before, so they didn't really skip a beat. Everything went on as it normally did. But we had many faculty members who had never taught online, never wanted to teach online. And we told them, you have to teach online starting next week. And so, they made it work pretty well. We have seen a pretty significant drop in our enrollment. We think that a lot of that is really due to broadband insecurity for a lot of our students. We have a very high number of low-income students. We are really distressed that our numbers of Hispanic students have dropped significantly over the course of the pandemic. So we're trying to reach out to our students almost individually and see what we can do to bring them back. We have obviously used a lot of CARES Act money that was distributed directly to your students. Really, really grateful for that. We also developed a much more robust emergency funding program for students that took away a lot of the hoops that we typically put in programs like that, where you have to bring your tax statements for the last 3 years to be able to get emergency money. So we've made it to where you can come in and pretty much get it the same day or the next day so that students can really have that funding to take care of what they need. But a lot of what we're looking at, we see this as something that hopefully is somewhat temporary, but it's going to also there are going to be significant differences in the way that we offer courses. When I came to Santa Fe a year ago, one of my goals was to improve our online infrastructure. And this isn't what I had in mind, though. So, we were able to take, we're very, people like to meet in person in Santa Fe, and a lot of people take classes at our college for social reasons as much as anything else. And the pandemic has changed that completely. But we've tried to make our all of our student services robust enough to the point where people are getting more and more comfortable with a different modality that they would have never done this. So it's a work in progress. We're continuing on, but I feel like we're holding on.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that very candid and very deep picture. Tiffany, we have heard really two very different stories right now, two different environments. And I'm fascinated because I know that your job is to put money where it matters in giving people greater choices than they were born with, undoing some of the built-in injustices, and creating greater opportunity. So your job must have gotten a lot tougher a few months ago with all of these issues. So as you hear both the stories of Santa Fe Community College and Miami-Dade College. How are you putting those bets out there? Because you're trying to create leverage points for change for people. So tell us about that process and what your dashboard looks like.
Sure. I think COVID really helped reveal for many people that, issues of inequity are more than feelings or even language. It's a matter of life or death in many situations. And part of the reasons that it's been so hard in higher ed is because this pandemic is layered on top of an inequitable system that existed, far before this particular crisis. So in terms of what we're advocating for, what we're pushing policymakers to do in this moment is to do more than going back to normal and just surviving this particular crisis, because normal and education has been funding inequity both in K-12 and higher ed, meaning the community colleges doing the important work that you've heard about today, how to get the least funding when it comes to how policymakers are divvying up resources. Of course, higher ed remaining unaffordable, and even for community college students, community colleges have done a good job of keeping tuition low, but understanding that 80% of the costs are those non-tuition things. And so imagining that it's community college students that are going to be hit the hardest by things related to, the eviction crisis and other matters like that around unemployment and more. And so again, these are still our students, and it still should matter to higher ed institutions and policymakers as they think about how to support student success. And so just in terms of some more particular guidance about how to use resources to support the students who need it the most in this moment, one is thinking about making investments in the colleges that already are serving more low-income students and students of color. And so folks have talked about the CARES Act and how they've been able to make good use out of the funds that have been made available, but we've been providing guidance to policymakers suggesting that in the future, those formulas need to be tweaked. For example, making sure that part-time students are fully counted in the number, especially as community colleges and also minority-serving institutions such as historically Black colleges, Hispanic-serving institutions as well, are more likely to have students who are either part-time or kind of weave in and out of full-time and part-time status based on their life circumstance. Colleges are doing hard work serving those students, and so it's important that they should count in any formula. The result in the CARES Act by not fully counting these types of students is that, community colleges are educating about 40% of students in higher ed, but only received about 27% of the CARES Act dollars. And just being more specific, that means about 7.6 million community college students were counted as about 3.4 million when it breaks down. And so these dollars matter because these are the students who are going to need the most support in terms of, emergency aid and more.
Right.
Some additional guidance, reminding, I appreciate the comments how colleges are making it easier to access things like emergency aid. So it's important that policymakers don't add additional barriers to make those types of funds unavailable by, particular requirements related to student citizenship status or other types of criteria that would make it harder for colleges to provide these types of resources to the students who need them the most. And most importantly, also keeping in mind issues such as student debt that existed far beyond the crisis, but perhaps are exacerbated in terms of their impact, and making sure that, again, those types of things in terms of temporary forgiveness, temporary pausing on payments is helpful, but it's a temporary fix to kind of a long-term problem. And so making sure that those types of solutions, whether it be debt cancellation, whether it be improving existing repayment programs, are part of how we're thinking about recovery for the long term.
Well, thank you. All three of you have kind of accomplished a lot. I'm going to ask each of you a single question because this is one of my obsessions as we're down at the end of the program. I just wonder if there are things, Dr. Montoya and others, whether you think there are things that the broader educational system can do to make education more ever-present in our lives. Like right now, I think there's a lot of, it's my own editorial view, that I think there's a lot of ageism that's built into the educating. You're young, you go to school. But you go to Miami-Dade College, you go to Santa Fe Community College, there are lots of so-called non-traditional students, which means they're older. And I'm just wondering what we need to do as a society, this is a society wraparound question, to kind of broaden the notion that continuing education, getting refreshed, going in and out, having more nimble credentialing, isn't this good? But it seems to me something that people seem to be cautious of. Dr. Montoya, I know that you've been experimenting with a lot of that at Miami-Dade, but I would love to see what we do to kind of scale to the nation that sort of approach, so that education becomes something that we don't do and is over, but is something that becomes ever present. So that's, part of today was talking about how we disrupt education in a time of crisis to get better. So I don't know if this is a good place to land, but maybe it is. So Dr. Montoya?
Well, let me start by saying that as my colleague from Santa Fe indicated, there has been resistance on the part of some members of the faculty and also on important segments of the student body, for whatever circumstances are, to engage in online or remote education. And this pandemic, one of the positive things of this pandemic is it has forced us to be creative and utilize technology a lot more than what we were using it before. I think that for the adult population, for the general population, the fact that education will be more available at home in the future, and individuals who were never able to complete education or probably are engaged in careers that are decaying and are not taking advantage of retraining opportunities to be in the labor market with higher salaries, with better occupations or professions. Right. I think that's a positive element of this pandemic, and definitely a lot of the new students that we are having right now, and of course with support from foundations and support from the federal government and the local government, are adults that this pandemic has left out of the job, and they are now taking advantage of retraining opportunities. Therefore, this is not something that will happen in the longer term. It's already happening. And I think that institutions need to be ready to serve these segments of the population that really want to progress. And another thing that we observe is that during this pandemic, the individuals who had professional jobs, higher technology jobs, were able to survive very well working from home, utilizing technology. But then you have big segments of the labor market that were unemployed or had no other remedy to assume all sorts of risks in order to continue working. And I think that many people are realizing the value of higher education and having more secure professions for the future.
Right, thank you. Becky, Rowley.
A couple of things that I'd like, and I agree with everything that Dr. Montoya said. So first of all, I think it's incredibly important that many more adults will realize that online education really can be a really a positive thing for them, and it can bring opportunities to people who just can't quit their job, go to class during the day, go to class, even, when we offer weekend classes and things like that, people don't really want to give up an entire weekend to go to class in person. It sounds good sometimes, but online is just a better option for a lot of people who have to work. But when I say online, I'm talking about well-designed online courses that are not something that somebody threw online overnight. So that is one important thing. But I think because we do have so many people in our state who are unemployed right now, and a lot of the hospitality sector has lost a lot of jobs in New Mexico. And so people are looking to get back into the workforce in some other fashion. And so a lot of short-term type retraining, I think, is becoming a lot more of an option that people really hadn't known existed before. And so I think that this is an opportunity for us to have more attention placed on and look more at the idea of short-term training that maybe doesn't lead to a degree or even a certificate, but that's something that can get someone into the workforce, into a really a good job, does pay a living wage. And then also maybe, more emphasis on moving towards digital badging and really looking at that kind of portfolio for student education that is probably a mix of credit and non-credit.
Right. Tiffany, I'm going to give you the last word on this. As you think about it and the bets you're making and trying to create greater equity in education, just give us a snapshot, if you would, of how you think we might make that shift. You've got dollars. You could help create incentives.
Yeah, absolutely. It means policymakers have to, when they think about what's universal or provided to all students in higher ed, it has to mean all students in higher ed. That means when counting, that means when distributing resources, and even things like free college programs. For example, we have an upcoming analysis that will come out in a couple of months. We take a look at who actually is eligible for statewide free college programs that are articulated as being universal by policymakers. Most of them exclude adult or returning students. That matters because many times these students are returning because they didn't have an opportunity in the first place. These are the students who actually would benefit the most with some assistance to be able to pay and make college more affordable. So it means, again, that policymakers have to mean all students when they say all students in the types of policies that they design.
Well, I really appreciate this. It's been a fascinating conversation. Rolando Montoya, interim president of Miami-Dade College, Becky Rowley, president of Santa Fe Community College, Tiffany Jones, senior director of higher education policy at the Education Trust. I really appreciate it. I mean, I feel the commitment from all of you and also the stress. And so thank you so much for sharing your candid thoughts with us today.